Welcome to my favorite part of the course. It's our ABCDE framework, and I first of all want to thank you for making it this far. I know the course had a lot of basics and a lot of fundamental elements to it, and I appreciate you keeping on track with the course because this is where everything is all going to make sense. This framework is so dear to me because it took such a long time trying to figure out how do I train my staff to find the right solution that's required for that lighting scenario. And it always changed, there were always iterations, and we couldn't keep on track with all the varieties. And this framework came out of need and desperation to train other people. And I'm really happy to share it with everyone taking this course. So again, it's called the ABCDE. And A is the applications, and we did speak about the different types of LEDs. We spoke about waterproofing. Then we talked about B, the brightness. We touched on brightness, about lumens, and we talked about the jargon. We talked about the lighting terminologies and the brightness levels, lumens versus watts. Then we spoke about control and circuitry. We did some basic wiring so you understand how LEDs are wired. Then we spoke about basic controls with wall switches and dimmers. So we spoke about some design elements that you have to take into consideration in lighting, and you take the D from the dimensions and the circuitry, and you now calculate and do your engineering for the system you plan to install. If you follow this framework from A to E, you're guaranteed to have a truly successful installation. So again, I want to give you a big clap, a big round of applause, and I want to say thank you for making it this far in the course and bearing with me the fundamentals. It was really hard for me doing the fundamentals again, but they're critical that you know it to ensure that this framework works well. So let's get into it. Let's dig into the first letter, which is A of the acronym, and A stands for application. And what do I mean by application is we're going to be looking at one, the environment. Two, we're going to look at how it's being used. So is it being used residentially? Is it being used commercially? Is it being used extended commercially, like 24 hours, like a casino? Then we're going to look at where it's being installed. And then finally, we're going to be looking at what is the direct application of the light. What is it being used for? Is it being used for a kitchen? Is it being used for a closet? Is it a ceiling abstract linear design? So in the application, we look at these four criteria. So let's get into it. So when I say A, environment, is it being used indoor or outdoor? What is indoor versus outdoor? So we spoke about outdoor and we're automatically assuming wet. And there's not only wet. You want to look at outdoor and consider sunlight also. Is it going to be exposed to UV light? Is it going to turn color in UV light? Not just the waterproofing aspects. In terms of the waterproofing aspects, you're going to be looking at, is it going to be exposed to water for long periods of time? Is there a possibility? We've done installations where somebody they had this fancy drain grill feature over their drain outdoors, and we put a LED light in it, and we had to keep in mind, so it gets all the funky patterns of that drain that was cut out. We had to keep in mind that at any given point, that could be flooded, that could be submerged underwater. So we had to use the right specifications to ensure that the installation was done correctly and it could last a long time. That's the point of what we're doing. So we spoke about sunlight, we spoke about rain, we spoke about it being submerged, we spoke about it being sometimes submerged or partially submerged. Now there are other unique scenarios that we'll consider under outdoor. We call them special uses. So you have hazardous locations. Is it being exposed to a hazardous location like an oil rig, a mine, where they have to have special ratings? Is it going to be used in a poultry depot that they have vapor proof requirements? Is it being installed in a spa where it has to be really sealed and be able to withstand high temperatures? And is it being installed by the ocean where if you use a cheap aluminum, it's going to oxidize and disappear? Or do you have to use brass? Is brass required? And you have to look at these out of the box, non-everyday scenarios unless you're directly in that industry. So you want to pay attention to that. And as I pause for a second, we're speaking not specifically to LED light strips, we're speaking to LEDs on the whole. Yes, this course is focused on LED linear light, but this could be applied for any lighting application. The next thing we're going to look at is the usage of the light in the application. Is this being installed residentially? And if you pay attention to LED bulbs, if you buy them, you might see a warranty that says, we warranty this bulb will last for residential use 3 hours per day. Now, we're not sure what the energy consumption per day is. That was based on some statistics in the US. But in our country, where we had a lot of energy subsidies, people left their lights on all day. It's no longer like that, but you want to be aware of what the fine print is. So we specify a little differently in our country, but you need to understand what is a residential use, and residential use is 3 hours per day in the US. In our country, we cater for 6 hours per day. You want to say what is commercial use, and think of commercial use like an office or a mall where they're going to be using lights for extended periods from 8 to 12 hours per day. Then I have another criteria that I call extended use, which is really for entertainment places where you can basically see the lights are going to be running 24 hours, because if it's not on during the opening period to the closing period, it's going to be on for servicing after. So those are your usages in terms of industries or time usages per day, and those are going to impact the lifespan of your LED. So let's say, for example, I'm doing a casino where the lights are being operated at 24 hours. What we would do is overspec the LED and run it at a lower brightness, so we benefit from the built-in thermal management for a higher performance, but we don't max out that thermal management. We just run it at half or whatever the scenario would demand. We would run it at a different power level and reduce the operating temperature, hence prolonging the LED lifespan. The other part of the applications that we look at is where is it being installed. So even though it's indoors, it could still be installing in a shower to highlight a niche in a bathroom. That means is it an indoor-outdoor application? Yes. Now it means we have to think of the IP levels as we would do for outdoor lighting. So we want to protect that LED from being submerged in water if it's a floor detail in the bathroom, or if it's in a steam room or a bathroom that has a lot of steam and you have that cove lighting above, and we would normally use a non-IP light in a dry cove ceiling, you're going to have to put a damp protection on that ceiling because the moisture is going to impact the lights. So where is very important. And then let's consider, I'll give you another scenario. We did a restaurant, but the lights were blowing constantly and we're trying to figure out what was going wrong. It was down lights. It wasn't even linear lights. In this case, what we realized is that there was no insulation. So our climate is very hot. So they just had the ceiling, and in that ceiling, it's just the aluminum roof of the restaurant, and it was very close to the bulb. So what happened is we had an abnormal operating temperature, and having an abnormal operating temperature means that it was very, very high, and then the LEDs didn't have, I wouldn't say it didn't have enough heat sink. There was less efficiency, so it still produced a lot of heat. And remember, heat goes upwards, not downwards. So when you pass your hand below the LED bulb, it's very uncommon to feel heat because that heat is going backwards. I've actually burnt my hand holding an LED bulb from behind. I was so hot in the past. Now, the issue that happened was the operating environment became really hot. The bulb was already really hot, and it just kept on destroying the circuitry and blowing or melting the lens, or something abnormal was happening. So what we had to do in that case was get them to insulate the space, and that helped the bulb and prolong the lifespan. So where it's being used is so critical because contradictions could come up. Changes in environment need to be taken into consideration. The last part of applications is, what are we using the light to do? What is the light intent? And I could say simply kitchen, closet, cabinetry, but as we dig in real scenarios, we're going to see that there are different layers of light that need to happen. As we spoke about on the previous unit, when we spoke about basic lighting design, you have your layers of light. Ambient lighting, you have accent lighting, you have ambient lighting, you have decorative lighting, and you have task lighting. You have to understand what the design intent is, because you can have a closet and the customer may not necessarily want just to see their clothing. We've done closets where there's an accent level to the back of the clothing, which provides no functional task lighting. So seeing a closet could be simple, and sometimes it could be complicated. Seeing a stairs could be simple because it just may be an accent light, but then some staircases might be black and you need an active light to illuminate the stairs. So understanding the design intent and what in the application, and not just saying it's a pool light or it's a cove light, that's where you are now more empathetic to the scenario and can make the best decision as an LED specialist. So that brings us to the end of applications, and we're going to move on to B, brightness. Knowledge I have emerged.